The chosen one. You felt it before you saw it, even before any evidence appeared or anyone explained it. There was a shift in the air, a vibrating frequency that did not belong to you. It was the sound of a lie collapsing, the faint cracking of a mask shattering under pressure. This immature liar, who spent so much time pretending, who built her identity on repeated stories and carefully staged performances, has finally lost control of the narrative. But their fall did not happen through a loud confrontation. It came to them like a whisper they couldn't stifle. They begged people not to reveal what they had done. They pleaded with frantic voices, promised favors, offered bribes, and tried to silence others through guilt. Yet, desperation has a sound. It creeps into every pause, every tremor in the voice, every rushed glance, every late-night call where words pour out faster than reason can catch them. Once a whisper escapes, it is impossible to call back. It multiplies until silence becomes impossible. It wasn't you who revealed their secret. It was voiced by their own tongue, by the fear they could no longer contain. They begged, but every plea was an accidental admission. When someone implores for silence, they are already admitting their guilt. Innocence does not seek to erase its tracks. Innocence does not call upon allies in the dead of night. Innocence does not invent new stories to mask yesterday's lies. Only guilt acts this way. Only a guilty heart spawns this frantic energy, this insomnia, this awareness that the truth is no longer a question of if, but when. Their attempt to stop you from finding out ensured that everyone around them already knew. They revealed more in their panic than you ever could have discovered in the calm. While you rested, they were racing. While you trusted in divine timing, they exhausted themselves fighting against the inevitable. And inevitability always wins in the end. The whisper became a rumor. The rumor became a story. The narrative became evidence. And the evidence became a torrent they could not contain. Imagine them at the edge of a dam, hands pressed against the cracks, water seeping in everywhere, their voices trembling as they beg others to act as if the flood doesn't exist. This is their collapse. They wanted to silence the stream, but their fear turned it into a river. The people they pleaded with became the bearers of truth because what they heard could not be hidden. Even those who were once loyal began to wonder, why are you so afraid? Why work so hard to bury these questions? These questions turned into doubts, doubts into distance, and distance into revelation. The silence they had bought through manipulation had an expiration date, and it arrived suddenly, undeniably, with no way back. And you were the chosen one. You didn't need to lift a finger. You didn't argue, you didn't defend yourself, and you didn't search for proof. You stood still. The truth acted on its own, carrying your justification on a current stronger than any voice raised against you. Their whisper became their loss, their plea became their ruin, their attempt to bury the evidence was the very reason it spread. This is the beginning of their collapse and the start of your ascent to authority. While they whispered, you listened. While they trembled, you stood firm. While they implored for silence, heaven prepared to proclaim the truth so loudly it would shake the foundations of their false kingdom. What they tried to conceal is now unveiled. And what they wanted to hide has become the story that reveals your strength. And once the whisper escaped, chosen one, it led you straight to the secret. To the rooms where late-night meetings took place without your knowledge. This is what you couldn't see at the time, but the images now resonate within you like a recording. The immature liar didn't just whisper in panic. They wove networks of secrecy, drawing people into lounges, discreet corners, and whispered phone calls after midnight, with the sole purpose of limiting the damage caused by your awakening. Imagine them sitting with allies who had become hostages, presenting carefully rehearsed scenarios, deciding who would say what if you asked certain questions, rehearsing which details to withhold, which lies to tell, which emotions to fake. They weren't seeking truth. They were manufacturing a performance, rehearsing like actors on a stage, fearing the curtain would rise too soon. Those hidden minutes were steeped in fear. You feel it now. The nervous laughter, the anxious tapping of fingers on tables, the sudden change of subject whenever your name was mentioned. They believed that if they controlled the narrative in private, they could control you in public. Secrecy is never neutral. Every meeting left an imprint, a heaviness that permeated their words, a distortion that followed them into the light of day. This is why conversations with them always felt a bit strange. Why the answers never matched. Why their eyes darted when direct questions were asked. They had spent the previous night practicing how not to tell you what you were supposed to know. What they didn't realize is that those minutes became evidence in themselves. Every decision made in the shadows eventually surfaces. The people who sat in those circles began to compare notes later. Someone mentioned a version of events that didn't match the others. Someone else remembered a promise that suddenly vanished. The threads began to unravel, not because you demanded it, but because truth has a force that secrecy cannot resist. Their private choreography turned into public contradiction, and their speeches began to ring hollow as soon as the light of day touched them. Do you see it now? The secret councils plotting against you were not fortresses. They were sandcastles facing the rising tide. Every meeting was another act of fear, a new attempt to escape the inescapable. Their phones lit up at ungodly hours, coded messages, half-spoken names, details hidden under vague excuses. And yet, the more they plotted, the more bogged down they became. They wove complex stories, but each new layer contradicted the last. They sought to protect themselves but ended up building traps they could not escape. Those they believed to be their most faithful confidants began to feel the weight of the lie, and their loyalty became fragile. The chosen one. Your mere presence became the test they could not pass. They practiced appearing confident, but before you, their words faltered. They prepared answers, but in your light, those answers collapsed. Such is the mystery of authority. You didn't need to confront their secret meetings. By your simple presence, you revealed the flaws in their preparation. Every clandestine meeting only heightened the evidence of their guilt. Every whispered strategy became one more burden, exposing their lie to the light of day. And now, those hidden minutes are hidden no more. They are the testimony of their fall. Proof that lies cannot survive long against the truth. They believed the darkness would protect them, but it only served to make the light even brighter when the hour of revelation arrived, and those hidden minutes, my child, melted into the illusion they tried to sell you through every smile, every calculated gesture, and every false tenderness they exhibited as true love. It wasn't spontaneous affection. It was a performance built on your own generosity, mirrored back to keep you under their spell. They studied your goodness like a manual. They watched how you forgave, your mercy, your faith in potential even when the evidence screamed otherwise. And they built a mask out of your expectations. They draped themselves in your language of compassion and fed you a vulnerability learned by heart, tears shed on command, a generosity that seemed sincere but was actually just a way to test your limits before you realized no authentic gift was being offered in return. This mirage was designed to look like love but function like a bond, an invisible cord pulling on your emotions until you doubted your own discernment. You remember how they appeared in your dreams. How their images persisted uninvited. How their thoughts crept into your mind at odd hours, disturbing your inner peace like invisible hands. It wasn't a coincidence. It was an artificial connection. A spiritual interference designed to mimic a soul connection while draining you of your energy. They learned to hijack your spiritual circuits using charm as a gateway, trauma bonding as a chain, and false synchronicities as a lock. They said the right words at the precise moment to echo your inner prayers. But it wasn't a revelation, it was manipulation. They analyzed your language and reinterpreted it to convince you of their alignment. Every "I understand you" was actually, "I am studying you." Every "I love you" was actually, "I need your light to dissipate my shadows." Every sweet word was a trap. The chosen one. That is why your mind was confused. Your intuition perceived the danger, but your heart was torn. You thought you were unstable, but in reality, you were resisting an artificial bond that wasn't meant for you. It is the worst of tricks to hijack your capacity to love and put it in a cage. They knew that if they could mix your empathy with their chaos, you would fight yourself rather than them. They hide control under the guise of closeness, dependency under the guise of devotion, and fear under the guise of passion. Yet, even the most convincing mirage dissipates under the fire of truth. Your awakening dissolved the spell. What once looked like a sacred union revealed itself to be a production, a game of smoke and mirrors vanishing under the weight of your discernment. And now, you see the pattern. What you took for affection was a calculation. What you believed to be alchemy was a strategy. What you felt as a connection was interference. The mirage collapses as soon as you stop feeding it with your beliefs. That is why they are terrified of your lucidity. Because once you name the counterfeit, it loses all its power. They cannot survive without your consent, and you no longer give it. Their false affection turns to dust in your hands. And in that dust, you discover your own authority rising like a fire, ready to consume everything that ever tried to imitate the truth of who you are. And when the mirage of affection finally collapsed, chosen one, what emerged? In its place, not trust, but raw, unfiltered panic, written in every one of their gestures. Panic has its own language. It manifests in the stuttering of words that once flowed so smoothly. In the sudden pauses where rehearsed lines no longer fit the questions asked. In the way their eyes dart as if searching for an exit. In conversations that should have been simple. One didn't need to be an expert to detect it. You just had to stop justifying it. The panic revealed them more clearly than any confession. One cannot fake a stable mind for long. Finally, the tremor in their voice betrayed them. The gasping breath between sentences. The sudden shift in tone when your discernment brushed against the truth. Every attempt to maintain control only highlighted their loss of mastery. You saw it in their timing. Messages arrived at ungodly hours. Early in the morning, as if they hadn't slept. Late at night, as if fear kept them awake. You noticed the endless explanations, the frantic justifications, for things you hadn't even questioned. Innocence lies in simplicity, but guilt drowns in details. They piled words on top of words, hoping that by speaking fast enough, you would stop listening to the vibration beneath their speech. But your spirit listens differently now. You hear not only what is said, but what trembles beneath. Their silence after your direct questions was more eloquent than any excuse. The story changed depending on the audience, but the panic was the constant, the indelible ink that marked every sentence. The chosen one. You began to see it not only in their words, but in their body. The nervous tapping of their foot. The fidgeting in their chair. The way their smile cracked like glass under pressure. Panic does not know how to stay still. It seeps into gestures, creeps into habits, and oozes from every unfinished sentence. They thought they could hide behind a facade, but their body betrayed them. It told you what their lips tried to conceal. They were running out of space, out of strategies, and out of allies willing to continue carrying the weight of their secrets. That weight always breaks the one who carries it before it ever reaches its target. And you were never the one carrying it. Now, panic accompanies them everywhere. It precedes them into rooms. It follows them home at night. It wakes them at dawn, whispering that truth is not a matter of chance, but of certainty. Panic is the ghost of their own choices, the echo of every lying word, the inevitable soundtrack of a collapsing empire. They are not afraid of you, they are afraid of the truth that walks with you. Every time they try to hide it, they reveal it further. This is the paradox of desperate concealment. They are writing the evidence themselves. Their panic has become their signature, and it will be remembered long after their lies are forgotten. The stolen energy. And this signature of panic, chosen one, leads you straight to the books they never wanted you to see. Not just financial ledgers, but the invisible accounts where energy is tallied, where stolen sparks are recorded like counterfeit currency. This immature liar was never satisfied with just deceiving through words. They learned to siphon what lived within you. Every time you comforted them, every time you explained yourself while they already knew the truth, every time you defended your intentions against their false accusations, they fed on it. They weren't just wasting your time, they were feeding on your energy, turning your compassion into fuel for their own agendas. Like a thief who steals not just the gold, but the flame from the lamp. They left you breathless, hoping you wouldn't notice why your strength diminished after every encounter. They framed it as a connection, but it was extraction. In hindsight, you can see the pattern, the sudden exhaustion after seemingly harmless conversations, the stalling of your creativity in their presence, the financial opportunities that vanished as soon as they became involved. It was not a coincidence. Their sabotage took many forms, sometimes subtle, sometimes brutal, but always aimed at destabilizing you. A tired chosen one is easier to manipulate. A chosen one plagued by insecurity is easier to control. A chosen one struggling with financial difficulties is easier to trap. They knew this instinctively. They manufactured moments to distract you, keeping you at the mercy of the holes they secretly dug in your boat. They wanted you too tired to navigate, too exhausted to dream, too worried to notice the pattern. The audit of the soul. But the universe keeps its own accounts. Truth always restores balance. Now looking back, the theft is blatant, compliments that only came after criticism. Validation withheld until you were in despair, resources that disappeared the moment you granted access. Every imbalance, every unreciprocated effort, every sacrifice you made that seemed to evaporate, it all points to the same operation. They plundered your soul for supplies, hoping you would mistake theft for intimacy. They treated your empathy as a line of credit, constantly withdrawing without ever depositing anything real. Yet, what they failed to understand is that stolen energy is never owned energy. It rots in the hands of the thief because it never belonged to them. Think of how many times you left confused, unable to explain why joy evaporated when you interacted with them. Your clarity blurred when they lurked near you. They were parasites disguised as partners. But parasites reveal themselves through the fatigue of their host. That exhaustion forced you to pause, to step back, and to examine the cracks in your soul. What you took for weakness was actually an alarm bell. Once you listened, everything changed. Your awakening was the audit they couldn't prepare for. You began to plug the leaks and repair the breaches. You realized your boundaries were the vault doors they couldn't force open. Your creativity returned once your space was reclaimed. What they thought was theirs has been returned to you sevenfold. Their panic grew because without your light, they had nothing left to trade. The ledger of stolen energy is now their indictment, proof written in the void they feel now that your presence no longer sustains them. The collapse of the choir. While they fed in secret, your light, once siphoned, now burns with an indomitable flame. It is a beacon of triumph. You now hear the collapse of the choir that rose against you like a storm. They had gathered voices like instruments, teaching each one to repeat their lies. For a time, it sounded convincing. Every friend seemed to say the same thing, every relative echoed the same doubt. This was not a coincidence, it was a composition. The immature liar stood in the shadows like a conductor, handing out scripts, ensuring the music of manipulation never missed a note. But a false choir cannot hold its pitch forever. The moment truth entered the atmosphere, their harmony cracked. What once sounded like a single voice turned into discordant tones, a cacophony revealing every hidden dissonance. Lies require constant rehearsal, tireless energy, and permanent surveillance. The conductor had to bribe them with sympathy or intimidate them into obedience. But panic weakens discipline. They told different versions to different people. When those voices compared notes, the illusion shattered. Suddenly, the choir was no longer singing in unison, they were arguing. You felt the shift. The words that once pierced your heart lost their power. The friends who relayed accusations began to hesitate. Some went silent, ashamed of being used. Others turned against the liar, confessing how they were recruited. The choir they created became a tribunal, each voice testifying to its own manipulation. This is how divine justice works. It doesn't need your defense. Truth creates its own witnesses. The invisible court. When the choir collapsed, the silence that followed was not empty. It was the sound of judgment falling into place. An invisible court began to form. You could feel it in the air, a shift where every hidden plot was suddenly weighed. The immature liar who once strutted with confidence now walks with tense shoulders and shifty eyes, as if summoned by a court they cannot see but cannot escape. This court is carved into the fabric of justice. Its walls are the memories of those they deceived. Its jury is the conscience of every soul they touched. Its judge is truth itself. They thought they could outrun it, but the evidence keeps surfacing in places they never expected. Forgotten screenshots, deleted messages, stories they thought were harmless. Even their own contradictions have become testimony. Chosen one, you didn't have to argue your case. Your survival is the exhibit. Your resilience is the testimony. Heaven has a way of balancing the scales without paperwork, turning every false oath into a boomerang. Justice doesn't always wait for earthly courts. It meets in the unseen realm, and its verdicts ring louder than a gavel. Every time they swore loyalty while planning betrayal, it was recorded. Every time they accused you of instability while fueling the chaos, it became an indictment against them. They built their own case more heavily than any prosecutor could. The final verdict. One by one, those they manipulated began to confess, not always with words, but through distance and avoidance. Every withdrawal was a testimony. Even their dreams betrayed them, restless nights where their own conscience whispered, guilty. This is why you feel such a power shift. What once felt like slander now reads like sworn testimony in your favor. What once felt like exile now appears as divine protection. This invisible court isn't about vengeance, it's about alignment. It reminds the world that the universe records every word and intention. Once the trial begins, no human hand can stop it. The liar can beg or threaten, but once truth presides as judge, their verdict is sealed. The scales cannot be tipped by manipulation. Now, the balance is visibly shifting. Their influence is fading. Their reputation is crumbling, not because you screamed, but because the invisible court spoke louder. You, the chosen one, rise not with bitterness, but with the victory of vindication, crowned with an authority that only comes when heaven is on your side. They thought they could manipulate people, but they forgot they could never manipulate the truth. In this court, truth always triumphs. That is why peace now rests on your shoulders. Justice is no longer pending, it is active and undeniable. The verdict was reached in secret, and soon, the whole world will see it written for all to see. And when the verdict of the invisible court resonated, the chosen won. The next sound you perceived was not a noise, but an absence, the void of withdrawal. One by one, those who once surrounded the immature liar began to disappear. Not always with spectacular exits, but also with silence, avoidance, and a sudden breach of loyalty that could no longer be mended. The people who once repeated all the same speeches suddenly stopped answering calls. Those who once transmitted messages on their behalf began to make themselves scarce. Such is the nature of exposure. It creates a shift in gravity. When the truth triumphs, lies collapse. And the orbit of the lie cannot hold its satellites. At first, you saw it happen slowly, shorter conversations, less eye contact, excuses that seemed weaker with every attempt. Then quickly, like falling dominoes, the entire support structure collapsed. They found themselves alone, in the echo of their own panic. Every manipulator believes they can maintain their network indefinitely. But no one wants to be chained to a sinking ship. Their allies calculated the cost and decided that the silence was too heavy to carry. The lies are too blatant, the risk too dangerous. Withdrawal is inevitable when the truth reveals the cost of association. You who have been chosen, remember all the energy they spent trying to isolate you. They portrayed you as unstable, untrustworthy, unworthy of support. And yet today, the isolation they created has returned to them in full measure. Except this time, it is not a divine protection around you. It is divine judgment surrounding them. Those who tried to deprive you of your community are now deprived of theirs. The vacuum is loud. It screams of loneliness, of projects that will never work again. Conversations that no longer have an audience to manipulate. The very ones who once rushed to spread their whispers now avoid them in public. They cross the street when they see them coming. They change the subject as soon as their name is mentioned. Silence becomes its own vulnerability. For absence speaks louder than loyalty. And it is in this void that you found freedom. I am no longer distracted by these flying monkeys. I am no longer surrounded by sown doubts. I am no longer exhausted by artificial dramas. You could finally hear yourself clearly again. Silence became your ally. Space became your sanctuary. The withdrawal cleared the fog of confusion and brought you clarity. What they intended for your isolation became the environment for your rebirth. In the void of their absence, you heard the fullness of your spirit. In the silence of their collapse, you discovered the strength that was buried under incessant noise. While they begged people to stay, heaven surrounded you with peace, meaning, and authentic connections that can be neither corrupted nor controlled. The emptiness of withdrawal is their consequence, but it is also your confirmation. Their empty circle proves that truth spoke louder than manipulation. Their loneliness proves that what they built was never real. Their collapse proves that your stillness was never a weakness. It was the attitude of someone chosen to survive the storm. And now, the silence surrounding them testifies louder than any accusation ever made that it is you who holds the authority. This vacuum is not your enemy. It is your justification, your proof, your seal of victory. The absence of their voices has become the throne of your clarity. And in the silence of their retreat, your spirit sings a new hymn to the freedom that no opposition can silence. And after the void of withdrawal, chosen one, came something even greater, the anointing of clarity. It was as if all the clouds obscuring your mind suddenly cleared, leaving the horizon wide open and bright. Where you previously doubted yourself, you now trust your discernment. Where you previously tried to excuse their behavior, you now clearly see the pattern. Where you once bent to maintain peace, you now stand firm in your authority. Clarity was no longer just a perception, but a gift. A divine anointing poured over you like an oil that never runs out. This clarity was not born of ease, but of fire. Every sleepless night, every tear, Every moment you thought you were losing your mind was actually the purifying fire consuming the illusions. The manipulator thought they were breaking you, but they were only sharpening you. The manipulation they used to confuse you became the contrast that sharpened your intuition. The very betrayal they orchestrated became the teacher that shaped your vision. You can now see through the mask before it even forms. You sense deceit before it is even spoken. Your spirit perceives what eyes cannot see. For clarity is no longer a tool you use. It is the mantle you wear. And this mantle changes everything. It changes the way you enter rooms. It changes the way you listen to people speak. It changes the way you decide who has access to your energy. Clarity breeds authority. And authority breeds peace. You are no longer panicked, you no longer bend, you no longer try to prove what you already know. You trust your intuition. And your spirit has been formed by the truth itself. That is why manipulative voices now sound like parasites to you. That is why counterfeit love now tastes like poison rather than nectar. That is why you can leave without guilt. For clarity has untangled the ties that once held you. Clarity also allows you to see ahead. You no longer see only what is in front of you. You see where the paths lead. You notice when a smile hides a dagger, when generosity conceals a hidden agenda, when an opportunity hides a trap. And instead of hesitating, you act with confidence. This discernment leads others to wonder how you know what you know. How you avoid the traps that swallow others. They do not understand that your eyes have been washed by fire, that your ears have been sharpened by storms, that your heart has been purified by betrayal until only the truth could remain. Chosen one, this anointing of clarity is not just for you. It is for those you will lead. Others will look at you and wonder how you see what they cannot. They will call it intuition. They will call it wisdom. But you will know it is an anointing born of trial, sealed by fire, and confirmed by heaven. Your lucidity will allow others to avoid traps they cannot yet recognize. Your discernment will protect others from snares they cannot yet see. And your story will testify that what the enemy intended to destroy you only forged you and made you an invincible person. Clarity is now your crown. And no one can take it from you. This is your heritage, your mantle, your confirmation. And every time you step into it, you prove that no liar, no manipulator, no plot can blind a chosen one anointed by the light of truth. Your vision is piercing, your spirit is unshakable, and your steps are steady. This is the fruit of clarity, of an unapologetic peace, of a wisdom without hesitation, and of a power without fear. And after the clarity, you were crowned the chosen one. What rose within you was not just silence, not just justification, but a song. The song of the unshakable. It is not a melody sung with instruments, but a vibration carried by your spirit. A resonance that tells the world that you are steadfast. After all those manipulations, all those plots, all those lies, they thought you were going to collapse. And yet, here you are, standing, breathing, radiant, singing without even needing to open your mouth. The sound of your endurance carries further than their accusations ever could. This song is woven from every tear that did not drown you, from every betrayal that did not break you, from every disappointment that did not stop you. It is woven from nights you thought were endless and mornings when you rose regardless. It is a harmony born on the battlefield, where your scars became notes, your pain verses, your healing the chorus. The liar's collapse gave you the rhythm, but heaven gave you the melody. And this melody is unshakable. You sing it when you stand in peace. You sing it when you refuse to give in to fear. You sing it every time you choose love over bitterness. This melody cannot be stolen because it was never given by man. It was written in eternity. When you enter a room now, people feel it even before you have opened your mouth. They perceive the stability, the grounding, the certainty that surrounds you. They may not understand why, but they feel safer, clearer, stronger. When your frequency fills the space, your song is not just yours. It is prophetic. It proclaims that darkness cannot triumph, that deceit cannot reign forever, that the chosen ones cannot be silenced. It proclaims to everything around you that your roots are deep, your light is assured, and your destiny cannot be stolen. Your song disrupts the atmosphere. It dismantles lies. It soothes tremors and makes the arrogant tremble. Your very existence vibrates with victory. This song also carries the message of freedom. It gives permission for others to rise. When they hear you, they realize that they too can endure the storms. They too can survive betrayal. They too can shine. Your unshakable song becomes their invitation to awaken. And that is why the liar feared you most. Not just your strength, but your voice. Because your voice multiplies, your courage is contagious. Your resilience resonates. Your faith spreads until it breaks the chains weighing on others. It is more than a matter of survival. It is a renewal. The chosen one. The song of the unshakable is the anthem of your story. You did not choose these battles, but you chose to remain standing. You did not ask for these betrayals, but you chose not to break. You did not program the pain, but you transformed it into prophecy. And now, your life itself is music. A music that testifies, a music that heals, a music that proclaims to the four corners of the world that you are unshakable. You are unshakable. And your song will never end. It will outlive the rumors, the liars, and will resonate for future generations. For the song of the unshakable is not just about you. It is about every soul that will find its voice because of your daring to sing yours. And when your feet no longer tread this earth, your voice will continue to rise, carried by eternity, a timeless hymn forever proclaiming that light cannot be silenced and that the chosen ones are unshakable. And now, you who have been chosen, slow the pace. Let the fire turn into warmth. You have crossed storm after storm in this journey through words. And now, make way for the calm after the feast. Everything that has been said here is not just a revelation, it is a confirmation. You are not imagining your strength. You are not exaggerating your victory. You truly stand in a new place. A place where the noise of accusations no longer reaches. Where the weight of manipulation no longer weighs. Where the pain of betrayal no longer defines you. Breathe, chosen one. Inhale the peace that surrounds you now. Exhale the weight that once belonged to them. The void that chased the imposters from your life has made room for those who are in alignment with your destiny. The silence that once seemed so lonely is now perceived as sacred. In this silence, you can again hear your own soul. And beyond, the voice of heaven assures you that you are safe. You are seen. You are celebrated. There is no need to run. No need to fight. No need to prove it. The verdict has already been delivered, and it is in your favor. The storms that once shook your foundations only revealed the depth of your roots. The lies that once confused you only polished the lucidity that now drives you. And the song rising within you is not a song of survival. It is a hymn of peace, a reassuring lullaby, a melody of destiny fulfilled. Chosen one, as you pass from this moment to the unknown of tomorrow, carry this truth with gentleness. You are unshakable, not because you never felt the earthquake, but because you endured it and remained standing. Rest now in this truth. Let it rock you like calm waters after the storm. You are whole. You are ready. You are free.